Good evening, and welcome to another Mothman podcast. We are your number one source for sci-fi and paranormal podcasts. Also be listening for podcasts from Moth and Flame. You'll be hearing about hypnotherapy and mediumship.
And also, please like and subscribe and comment on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Instagram, Twitter, and more. And you can find out a lot more about our services on mothmanpodcast.com.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Amanda.
Hi, Darrell. How you doing?
Bruce.
Hey, how's it going, Darrell?
And we have a special guest with us tonight, and I want to give Amanda the chance to introduce our special guest for tonight.
Tonight on the podcast, we have my friend Pooh, like Winnie the Pooh. And we met a few years ago working at a restaurant that where I was hosting and Pooh was serving. And I found out later that she was a medium, and I also had discovered that I was a medium. And so we have that in common. And she's kind of been mentoring me and teaching me a little bit about what she knows, because she's a lot further along down the road than I am. So welcome, Pooh. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Now, Pooh, it's my understanding that the medium kind of spreads out. There's seances, there's card readings. What all does it encompass?
Well, medium's just kind of a general, as you said, description of the action of channeling. And so channeling means that you're getting information to do different things, basically to foresee things, to check out the energy around a person or a situation. And you're gaining that information through your intuition. And so you can actually channel an actual person, or you can divine information through divination, say cards, runes, stones, sticks, or with mediumship, you're actually channeling, you're actually feeling a person come in. You either can take that person into your body. Some people actually channel and not remember, or you can feel them come in and they speak through you. Okay,
this when you say channeling, just for an instance, my mother used to be one that all the people around back in the olden days when you had to find a whale and certain things like this. She used to find a certain branch, and she would hold the branch in her hand, and she would walk around, and it would kind of just start bending towards the ground whenever. But this didn't work with everybody. I couldn't do it. My dad couldn't do it. But my mother, when she would walk around and it would start bending towards the ground, sure enough, you could drill right there and you would find water.
Right.
So is that kind of like what we're talking about there in channeling? Or is that something different? Okay.
I think people channel every day. People channel all the time. They just don't call it that. So if you you feel someone from across the room staring at you, and then you turn around and you witness them staring at you, that's a form of channeling.
Is that feeling that you get that somebody's staring at you? Is that what you're saying, or is it something different?
What includes that? Okay. I mean, that's psychic information and psychic reception, so to speak.
And I think you would probably agree with me that we're all mediums to varying degrees, and some of us just have like a heightened sense or have developed it.
Correct.
But we can all feel it.
Well, everybody can run to a certain extent. Some are better than others.
Right.
Some have a real talent for it. Some are faster and make a job of it.
So is this?
Kind of I am not one of those people.
Is that mean you can't run, or is you can't?
My army days are over.
Now you also made me lose my thought. I guess can you grow this ability? Is it something that you can
definitely
you can train yourself to get better?
Sure. I didn't realize I'd been channeling my whole life until, and I hadn't even thought about, quote unquote, becoming a medium until I was doing tarot readings at the store. I work at Kindred Spirits downtown, metaphysical shop. And I was doing a reading, and this gentleman who comes in quite often named Carl, it was the first time in the store. He pops in through the door. He looks me straight in the face and points in my face and goes, "You're a medium." And I just started laughing. So then I really started thinking about it a little more, because other people said, well, you have people around you all the time, and meaning spirits.
Yeah.
And so as I continued to do more work through divination, I'm just trying to find the right words. I developed more skill, just as you do with anything that you practice, like an instrument. Mm-hmm. And so I would get more, faster, clearer information and more detailed information. And so when because I was scared at first, the initial idea I had of channeling meant that some spirit was going to pop into my body and take over it, and I was not going to be in control. That's really not what happens at all.
So that's the film industry, right?
That's the Hollywood version of channeling. Some people do channel and not remember. They remove themselves so much that the spirit, if you will, takes over and actually uses their own voice. That's not what I do. But getting back to my first experience with it, I was having a discernment session with a shaman, and meaning that he was just kind of helping me get in touch with my gifts and be more comfortable with it. And so I was sitting there, and I felt, it literally felt like from the top of my head all the way to the tips of my toes, it felt like pressure sliding in sideways into my body. And it freaked me out because I felt my face drop like an old person's face would droop, or maybe somebody who had palsy. It didn't feel like, it felt other. And so it scared me, and I kind of pushed it out, meaning that I thought it'd get out, and so it left. And then in hindsight, I realized that it was actually my grandfather, because I got the information.
Right.
Because I do that anyway. That was something I was familiar with through reading and just through psychic abilities and intuition.
Wow.
And so I was kind of sad afterwards, because I was like, oh, I missed an opportunity to visit with him. And so
have you ever tried to recreate this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I do it now professionally.
Okay.
So
no, I'm talking about with your grandfather.
Oh, with my grandfather? I did not with my grandfather, but I have invited family members in, and they're not always around. They may be off doing other things. I'm not sure what that is, but
I totally know what you mean.
They're not always available when you ask.
Right.
And so I did have my mom visit, and she came in I had given instructions. I was like, only people that are close to me. I had limited who could come in to my parents or to my grandparents. And I said, please do it slowly so I don't freak out. And so I felt her come in bit by bit. And I just knew it was her because of the way, it's the same feeling I had whenever she was around when she was alive. And so I knew it was her, and so I was talking to her, and she was talking back to me. And she's the only one with the information that I was talking about.
Right. Amanda and I and Bruce have just received some emails, lately, and one of them was directed at Amanda, and one of them was just directed to the podcast. And they were talking about one of them that we just aired was talking about their mother had come back and was talking to them.
Yeah.
And so now she truly believes that the living can talk to the dead because of her experience.
Correct.
That she had between her mother and father just before the father passed away. But yeah, I can see where you're coming from, and we have another letter that has not aired yet because Amanda and I have been doing some research on. It kind of alludes to the parallel universe, and but one of the entities that came back to this lady in her dream acted like it bothered her. It said, "What do you want now?" It kind of. I think the lady described it in the letter. Says I acted like I was bothering her because she was doing something, and she had to break away from what she was doing. So she was talking about the parallel universe in that one, and that one will air shortly. But I guess there's a realm out there that the spirit or our entity dwells in, and we've always discussed on this podcast about when we die. Our energy of our brain still lives, and our brain is our soul. Some people call it, and other people call it just our spirit. But it never dies. It goes into
it's pure consciousness.
It goes somewhere. It does something. And I guess that's what you're channeling, right? That energy from a prior life.
That's what I've experienced so far. I actually saw my father immediately after his death.
Oh,
he
wow.
came to me purposely.
Did he?
Mm-hmm. There was a lot of information that he had left undone. His death was a suicide. And so he, I appreciate that.
That's so awful.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So sorry.
It's okay. When people are sick, and they don't see any other way out.
Yeah.
That's what can happen. And
Yeah.
if you don't get help, then that's what can happen.
Right.
We had a weird experience in my family after my grandfather on my mom's side passed. He was like 85 when he passed. Well, my cousin Angie, she has a 4-year-old son, and the morning like he died in the morning, probably like 6-7 o'clock in the morning in bed asleep. Around like 8:30, 9 o'clock that morning, before Angie even found out that Grandpa was dead, her 4-year-old Nicholas said, "I just saw Grandpa." And he said he saw Grandpa in his bedroom.
Yeah, that's not unusual with kids.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty interesting. When you're talking about immediately after someone passed, I mean, it was that morning.
Well, and kids haven't gone through the forgetting either. That connection with spirit.
Well, I don't know if Amanda's told you, but I'm a hypnotist.
Neat.
And, in our training to become a hypnotist, I went through training up in Asheville, North Carolina. And my instructor there was, and one of the first things you learn is, the mind's made up of your conscious mind, and then you have a filter, and then you had the unconscious mind. Well, children between the ages of probably birth and about 5 to 7 years old, they're using 100% of their subconscious mind, okay? So they can go and see things that you and I can't see because of the fact that we've got so much now going on in our conscious mind that we block our subconscious mind. And the only things that really get through to our subconscious mind is the facts that we won't allow in there. And for recall, now everything actually is going in there.
Correct.
But we allow only certain parts for recall. And so we block out the parts, like if somebody's listening to this and they think, well, this is a bunch of BS. So they block all of it out. It's actually still going in their subconscious mind, but they're not going to recall it because they don't have any conscious desire to recall what we're saying now. But I guess what I'm getting at is the fact that, children and I believe just before we die, we shut down our conscious mind and we go back into our subconscious mind and we can recall things that we can't normally. Everybody says, well, for an example, my mother passed away of Alzheimer's. Well, she always thought that I was, in her conscious mind, she always thought I was somebody that she used to play with. She knew me, but she didn't know who exactly I was. But just before she died, a couple of days before she died, my dad always asked when I walked in the room, and my mother's name was Georgia. He would say, Georgia, do you know who this is? And she would always say, oh yeah, we used to play together or something like that. But a couple of days before she'd passed away, when I walked into the room, my dad says, Georgia, do you know who this is? She says, of course, it's Darrell. So I think just before you pass away, you're shutting down your conscious mind, which was blocking her from knowing me. And she was back in her subconscious mind. She knew everything then. And I think that's the reason that just before your death, you start hearing and seeing things from individuals that might not have said anything for years and years and years about a certain subject. But now they're recalling it. So it's back in their subconscious mind all the time. And then when our spirit is released, I believe what you guys are channeling, you and Amanda are channeling, are the actual subconscious mind of the person that had passed away. So they can recall things. And that's where we go back into regression into prior life regression and being hypnotized into prior life regression. So, there's a lot of things that's out there. And here again, I'm taking over the podcast and I'm going to stop it right now. But Pooh, while I've got you in here and got your attention, just tell me some of the things that you've done in the past and some of the things that you do to help Amanda to become a better channeler.
Well, the best thing you can do about getting in touch with natural gifts like this, intuitive gifts, is to get out of the way. And the best way to get out of the way, meaning the mind doing its incessant chatter on the conscious level, is to sit back and breathe and relax, and then allow. And so meditation is one of the best ways to get in touch with your intuition and psychic gifts if you have them.
Yeah, definitely. And I know I initially had come to you because I had a lot of fear and like uncertainty and
a little bit of anxiety surrounding
anxiety.
It all.
Yeah.
And is this real?
Yeah, exactly.
Or about the whole channeling thing about like, are they just going to pop in and take over?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. That's just not what happens.
And you taught me how to ground myself and protect myself. And I have been able to like channel things and see things that like on a whole new level since I've been working with you. It's just been amazing.
I'm so glad I could be helpful. When we say channel or intuition, it's the information that people tend to blow off and label it, okay, synchronicity, coincidence. I don't believe those things at all. I think that is divine information.
Now, give me an example of what you're saying there.
Okay. I went to a music festival back in Lenox, Massachusetts, back in the early 2000s. I was a student. I'd never been there. And there was this secluded beach called the Boston Symphony Orchestra Beach, the BSO Beach. And it's down this dirt road. You had to know exactly where to turn. There was no sign. You had to know exactly where to turn, and it wound around, and it was kind of hidden. I knew exactly where it was. I'd never been there in this life. And okay. I found it. I said, where is it? And so I listened to instruction that I was being given. Mm-hmm. They said, turn here. So I turned there. And so every time I listen to that guidance, you can call it whatever you want, but it is divine guidance as far as I'm concerned. Like I was running late for work a couple of weeks ago, and I said, this is what I need. So the more I communicate with spirit, the more information I get back, and the more clear information I get back. I said, I really need to be on time for this. I have a client. And so I was headed the way I normally head to work. And they said, no, turn here. I was like, and I'm talking in my head. I'm thinking in my head. And I was like, this way is always too busy. Turning right on Academy Street is always too busy. You can never get the light on Peters Creek Parkway.
This is true.
They said, turn right on Academy. I said, okay, fine. fine.
You gave in to yourself. Okay.
Well, I was like, okay, it's the fine that a woman says when,
Yeah.
when everything's not fine.
Exactly.
and so I
I've heard
did
that
it.
one before.
I did it anyway. And so I was driving down. Everything was clear. I go swooping down the hill. Light is green. I turn left. There's no traffic in front of me.
Wow.
There's no traffic in front of me anywhere. I hit all the green lights downtown, 10 a.m. in the morning. It never happens. And I got to work with 3 minutes to spare. I was on time for my client. And so
Because you listened.
I listened. And every time I listen, things turn out really well and beyond what I could imagine. And every time I don't listen, especially to the important stuff, I get myself in a heap of trouble. And so I listen now.
So are you saying that is someone that is watching over you, your guardian angel type person?
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe that we have more than one. I believe we have guardian angels. I believe we have spirit guides. They're different heritages that call them different things. I think it's all the same.
Yeah.
Well, I got it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I got a few questions for you. I was wondering, because I know in your field, you said you use crystals. There's a lot of ways to divine information.
Sure.
What's your preferred method to divine?
Well, my preferred method is just to do it. I think divination tools like cards, runes, all those they're very helpful in focusing, and they do give you partial information. Mm-hmm. But the best way is just to get out of the way and allow the information to come. Because I really would eventually just to not depend on any tool whatsoever other than
That's
direct
me
connection.
Too. Yeah.
Everybody, I'm sure a lot of people have seen this. Remember the old photo where I can't remember the medium's name, but it was back in the 1920s or 30s where she had a seance.
Okay,
and
Madame Blavatsky, or
Maybe.
Where she, I think she was channeling a spirit, and she actually, in the photo, you see her coughing up ectoplasm. Mm-hmm. Now, have you ever heard of anything in real life, ever that severe?
That is not within my experience. But I also, before I do anything like that, I call in spirit. I call in protection for myself, so that's in place. Mm-hmm. And so I believe that when I do that I am protected, and so that it's like putting on a safety belt. It doesn't save you from everything, but it's
right.
a good start.
That's what I was wondering.
I do have some experiences I'd like to share.
Please.
Speaking of my father, I was it was the first time I really saw a visual. Mm-hmm. The information I usually get is auditory or sentience, feeling. I just get inklings or feelings, or just sentences form in my brain. Some people might call that schizophrenia,
Right?
But it's different, I believe, because
try explaining that to your psychiatrist. I had to go in and say, okay, I am not schizophrenic. I'm positive, but this is going to sound crazy.
Right. Yeah. People come into the store all the time and said, this is going to sound so weird. And we're like,
No.
not in here.
Not in here.
Not in here. But he had passed away that morning. And I was out and back. This was when I still smoked cigarettes. I was out in the backyard, flew in from Boston, where I used to live, down to Eastern North Carolina to my parents' home. I'm in the backyard and I'm smoking a cigarette. And about, 100 yards away, there's my dad standing there. He's standing there and his arms are open. Hi. He's excited to see me. And I wasn't even thinking twice. I was like, I don't want to talk to you. I'm pissed off at you. And then poof, he was gone. And he had left all this information organized before he died. He wanted to make sure that things were taken care of. And one of those things were some papers for my grandmother that he had forgotten to put out. My mom was really stressed about it because she wanted to make sure that everything was, it just anxious. She was feeling anxious about it. Mm-hmm. And so I came back inside and she said, Pooh, your friend Brian's on the phone. Now, Brian Sullivan is a very, very gifted psychic. He's been aware of his gifts since childhood, and he is a very good friend of mine in Boston, and he said, "Pooh, your dad's here." I was like, "What's he doing?" He said, "He's knocking things off the wall. He's turning the lights on and off, and he's saying, 'Call Pooh, call Pooh, call Pooh.'" I was like, "Okay, so what does he have to say?" He's giving me images, and so Brian was just getting kind of mind pictures like Polaroids. He said, "There's a leather bank satchel and a metal box," and so that was all the information he gave me. So my younger brother and I went down to my dad's office, and we're on a search and destroy mission to find this stuff. And we asked his secretary, did he have a safe deposit box that nobody knew about? And she said no. And we searched for about an hour and didn't find anything. So we kind of like threw in the towel and went back home. And 20 minutes later, Hermie calls and she said, "I found them." I said, "Well, where were they?" She said, "It was in a private metal filing cabinet of your father's in a leather bank satchel."
Wow.
And so from that moment on,
Yeah.
I
direct
learned to start
communication.
really trust
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it, I trust it. And as far as like when people say, "Do you believe in the afterlife?" I'm like, well, yeah. Because I've seen it.
Right.
He was there, and it wasn't like he was fuzzy. It wasn't like an ethereal, ghostly figure. It was my dad standing there with his arms open, smiling at me.
Yeah.
Because what Brian told me, he said he didn't know you had these gifts when he was alive.
Oh, wow.
And so when he passed over,
then he could
saw,
see
he
you.
could see the channel.
Yeah.
He could see that I was available. It's almost like a taxi light being on. Taxi's on.
Yeah.
You wave him down. And so it's kind of like what
shiny.
it's, that's exactly what my friend RJ says. RJ Walker is a very talented shaman. And he's really helping me a lot with my discernment and my development of my gifts. And so he said, "They're all around you. They're waiting. Keep working." Because they have
Now-
things to say.
Right.
My grandmother, I don't know if she's one of my guides, but she's always there for advice and to kind of like point in certain directions and that kind of thing. Are your parents or your grandparents around you for that?
I don't find that I'm getting information specifically from my parents. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. And I say that because it doesn't feel like them.
Are they believers?
Definitely my mother was. My parents have both since passed on.
Okay.
But after my father passed away, that's when people start telling the secrets of the family.
Yeah.
Information you never knew. It was like, "Oh, I've never heard of that before."
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And I find that I get my gifts equally from both sides of my family. I see pictures of my father back when he was back, say, in his 20s or early 30s, and he used to do a lot of amateur photography. He had a lot of fun with that. And I look at some of the pictures, and I see the orbs around him, and I see the spirits, for lack of a better word,
Yeah.
around him. I also
Film was the best for capturing the paranormal.
just the way information was trusted, just the way people talked, stories that they told.
Right.
I grew up in a haunted house, so there's that as well. The feeling of being watched, things moving.
Yeah.
I've lived in a couple of those. Live in one right now.
I start to tell you, still live in one. I guess, now, our last investigation, which aired this past weekend, the Susie Martin home, when Amanda went in, and then finally she got to the point, she says, "I got to get out of here." Do you find that the darker spirits are harder to deal with Is that what you were running into, Amanda?
It was more like, I think I told you this when I came over the other day. That spirit, she was a nice lady, but she was desperate to communicate. So she tried to jump me. She tried to enter through my
back of your neck.
Yeah. And I felt so much pressure, and I just had to get out of the house.
You don't have to leave. You can tell them to stop.
So I
You
didn't
can
know
tell
that at
them
the
to
time.
leave.
Yeah.
You can, and they will.
Yeah.
That's been my experience. It was like, you know what, not now. Now's not a good time.
Now, yeah.
And they're like, okay, fine.
And she didn't try it again. She was very polite. She was a very kind woman. She gave me the message that she wanted her daughter to hear. But for that 1 minute, and I didn't know that, like, I could have used the chalk. I could have,
Right.
done a lot more to protect myself. And
Or
because it
even
was
just
so
direct
just
them.
uncomfortable.
Because one thing that I have been taught is that you have to be in charge. Like when my mom, I didn't realize that it was going to take so much energy out of my own kind of personal battery. And so when I did make contact with my mom and I hung out with her for 2 hours.
Oh my
which
God.
is a lot. And so I was really spent the next day and kind of had to really recuperate. But you have to tell them to leave.
Yeah, you
So
do.
when you're channeling, it's important just to kind of like keep an eye on the clock and not let it run way too long.
Yeah.
And then direct them and say, okay, thank you. Always thank for the visit. And then say, now it's time to go. We'll have to visit some other time. Mm-hmm. Just like you would a person in front of you,
Right.
be polite.
Yeah.
And give direction. Some are more insistent. They don't want to leave. They don't have to rest.
Yeah.
And so they don't have anything pressing on them in that way, like we do physically.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes they tell us to leave because Bruce and I got on the
if you're
our
in their
sound.
space.
Yeah, they the last words that I think we heard was quit.
The last EVP we caught on our last investigation was quit.
Well,
so we quit.
Yeah. So it's just like, maybe they don't. Maybe now's not a good time. Maybe they're not social.
Well,
maybe you're in their space.
One of them we figured was probably Heather's grandmother. So that was the friendly, one that was trying to get Amanda's attention. But we actually heard another man and woman's voice when we did the spirit box, and one said her name was Beth and that she was 6 years old. And the man, he didn't give us any information, but the family that lived in the house said that they had seen this tall figure in robes, and like so tall that it had to duck down to like keep from hitting its head on the ceiling. And we actually caught like a stick figure on the SLS that matched that height to the description. So
angelic presence can tend to be really, really tall.
Well, he seemed...
He's not.
He seemed the opposite direction.
Gotcha.
Because the daughter in that house didn't come out of her room. She seemed like she was kind of oppressed.
Trapped.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I think a lot of people get scared when communicating with spirits. One, because of the kind of thing you experienced, Amanda.
Yeah.
Like if somebody just kind of jumped you.
Yeah.
Because they interrupted.
Right.
It just like kind of took over the conversation almost.
Exactly. Yeah.
A lot of people become afraid because of the darkness and, of perhaps what they're seeing. That doesn't necessarily mean negativity. Sometimes they're picking up on sadness, and sometimes because we don't understand, that they just maybe just want to talk or not talk in that case, that we interpret it as scary.
It's scary. Yeah,
And
but
sometimes
because it's unknown.
Right. Well, we don't have a lot of information about it.
Right.
I mean, it's not like you can see them and carry on a full conversation. You can catch bits and pieces as an investigator with our equipment. We can do spirit boxes and EVPs, but even then you're only getting small bits of information. So, I mean, what, the homeowner thinks is malicious could be just someone being frustrated because they can't communicate properly and say what they want to say.
Right, and they've been trying.
Yeah.
They've been trying and trying and trying. And you do get information in bits and pieces. Like I have a spirit board that I made because I don't really trust, Parker Brothers with their Ouija.
Yeah, she has her own Ouija board that she made herself. It's really cool.
It's an old cutting board.
But
It's not made out of a coffin.
Yeah.
It's just a cutting board. It's a whole cutting board.
Our research
super
showed
cool.
that the original was made out of lids of coffins.
No.
Well, that's interesting. I'd like to see that sometime.
And so the communication is like, it takes them a lot of energy to like move things.
Yeah.
And so it's much better just to kind of like not have tools and to be available.
It really is.
Just to get the information. Just to be able to talk. And
Yeah, it takes a lot of energy. I don't know if you've watched one of our first YouTube investigations where we go into this house and Bruce is standing there talking to the owner of the house, and I'm down the hallway, and all of our batteries go dead. I mean, just all of our recording equipment goes dead. Okay.
Right.
So we get back and we're doing our debriefing, and we start putting batteries back into our equipment, and we start playing our tape recorders. And just as plain as you and I are talking right now, you can hear, "Hi, Darrell, Jimmy," because we'd been asked in the entity its name.
Right.
And so whatever happened, it took every bit of energy in all of our equipment for him to put that on the recorder, and none of us heard it while we were there.
And when he says loud, like, it was so loud, like it was almost like someone talking extremely loud into the mic on the cam. And it drained like 3 cameras worth of 3 batteries.
And plus, the recording equipment.
Yeah.
But it did. And all of them went dead about the same time, exactly the same time.
Yeah. So what's another experience you've had?
Well, with my clients, just recently, it's really interesting to be able to like get information about perhaps what they look like without asking, because I don't let them tell me what they look like beforehand, because I like to be able to ask them. I asked one of my clients, I was like, "Was he a big man?" She's like, "Yeah, he was really tall." Because what it felt, first of all, is the same when I visited with my mother. Mm-hmm. It felt like someone, like, here I am, it's like a paper doll, and then it feels like they're sliding in behind you.
Oh, wow.
And, like, they feel like they're inside my body. It just feels like a little bit of pressure, maybe.
Yeah.
But the reason why I knew he was really big, because my hands felt huge. They felt like baseball mitts.
Yeah.
And when they're there, when they're visiting, they're looking through my eyes, and it's like this filter comes up. It's like watching Dynasty or Dallas.
Yeah.
And they do a close-up of Joan Collins, and you get that, like, glamour filter, like glamour shots kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what it looks
the
like.
Vaseline on the camera.
When you're looking, that's what I'm seeing through.
Yeah.
So everything's clear except for it has that little bit of, like, glamour fuzz to it.
Wow.
And he did take over, like, I felt his facial expressions. Like I said, was he a really smiley guy? I felt my eyes just kind of squint up really tight, and my cheeks were just like really kind of tall in my face. And she said, yeah, he was. And then they would give me kind of snippets of what, like, perhaps they would call their loved one. The actual spirits that would say baby girl or something like that. And
yeah,
that's what my grandfather used to call me. So that's kind of the information that I'm getting when I'm channeling, and it doesn't feel like I don't feel any different than I used to, which tells me that I have been channeling all along, and it explains weird things that I've experienced way younger.
Yeah, like what?
It's always happened when I was vulnerable. Like I was at a swim meet and I had been doing butterfly, and I choked on the water. And so I got disqualified and was kind of like out of breath and kind of little disoriented. So I'm sitting over to the side.
Yeah.
And I'm hanging out with some other swimmer friends. And somebody got me a glass of water, and it was like, and then something said, throw the water in her face. I was like, what? But literally, in my head, they said, throw the water in her face. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. And all of a sudden, my hand just jerked and threw this
God.
Dixie cup of water in this girl's face who was right in front of me.
Yeah.
Like, and now I realize, it was like, because I was like, that wasn't me. And I was like, I'm so sorry.
Oh my
like,
God,
what did I
that's
just
crazy.
do? But there are lots of those kinds of things that I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that wasn't me.
Yeah.
Now I understand. But it's not ever at a point where I'm not vulnerable.
Right. Yeah.
It's not ever at a point where I'm not really tired. I've had them step in when I was drunk.
Yeah. I hear you.
Which is why it's really important.
But officer, it's not me.
I don't think that goes over.
Yeah.
Trust me, I'm been a cop all my life. Don't try that one.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I'm more of a trance medium where what I get is when I'm meditating. And I do get impressions off of people a lot of times, but when I'm really able to clearly hear spirit, like I was meditating recently about this lady that we're going to be going to her house for an investigation. And I just said, any of her loved ones that want to pass a message along, please step forward.
Careful with that. Just keep going.
Okay. Yeah, I want to hear. So a grandmother figure stepped forward, and I kept tasting mint in my mouth, and then a middle-aged man stepped forward, and they just had their arms around each other, and there was just a feeling of warmth, and just we're together, we're taking care of each other, and just let her know we love her. And so I passed that message along to her, and she said, yeah, that was her grandmother and her father, and the grandmother was the mother of the man. And, the mint related as well. She had kept mint around her house. And
She grew it in her kitchen window.
Yeah.
Is what the lady said.
And I kept thinking maybe it was mint chewing gum because my grandmother had mint chewing gum.
Mine was juicy fruit.
Yeah, that's my mom.
Big red.
Old lady purse.
So why should I be careful with that?
Well, what I was saying be careful about was anyone who, you have to be really specific. It's like anyone coming from a place of light and love.
Okay.
Because you just invited anyone.
Yes, I did. Yeah, you're right.
And so if you're that
And to be very
open,
careful.
We don't want Zozo to show up.
Yeah, we don't want Uncle Tommy, who used to touch us in our no-no spot.
Oh, no. No, we don't want that.
Oh, my God.
I'm interested. Is it easier to channel talking to someone like that is a true believer than somebody that is a very skeptic that doesn't believe in anything? We're just here on earth, and after we die, we go to dust, and we're dust under the chair. When you communicate, is it easier to channel for some person like that is a believer than a non-believer?
I don't really have a lot of non-believers come to me. I mean, it is the kind of...
That's what I was going to say. They don't come.
it is,
Yeah, but do you ever get a feeling that
I
you
have
need to
people who are
tell
being
somebody
tested.
something that a non-believer, that somebody is trying to communicate something to them, and you try to tell them what you're seeing or hearing, and I'm just curious, I guess, asking a question about this.
I have had the level of accuracy to where people who are, poo-poo it, so to speak, have at the very least gone, oh, that's interesting. They've responded very well. I have had moments where I'm done readings for people. This is just like strictly with tarot, where I feel like someone's come in to test me, to see what kind of skill I may or may not have, to try and debunk,
see if it's real or not.
To debunk.
Yeah.
And the response I usually get is, which tells me I've kind of touch the soft spot on
Like-
someone. Like, they don't want to reveal too much.
Yeah.
And
But I know that I've hit a button.
Right.
I'm kind of one of those people. I'm not going to lie. Like, I mean, I believe that, I do believe that, there are psychics and people that can channel, but, there's always those dime a dozen, like, tarot card, hand, palm reader kind of people that, like, I've never personally, gone to a psychic for, like, a reading, but I've always been interested in, like, wanted, like, to have a tarot reading and see what would happen, like, for my own curiosity's sake. But I have witnessed other people who possessed, psychic abilities, like, be the real thing. And, and, there's no other way to explain it, what they did. It's just that I've never personally, besides Amanda, it's like, I've never, like, had a conversation with a medium. And, so
That you knew about.
Right.
Now you have to understand, this is Bruce Wayne, Batman, talking to you.
Well, I'm a man of science. I believe in God too, and I do believe, I am, spiritual and whatnot. But but I'm also like, I don't know. It's like,
me too.
until
I'm
I
spiritual,
experience something, I kind of take it with a grain of salt.
Absolutely.
Well, and this is what this podcast is all about. We're being a police officer all my life, I've dealt with facts. So we're not here to say whether you're right or wrong or indifferent. We're here to just try to find the facts. And that's what he's saying now is we're just out here trying to say, you have a gift, let's bring that gift forward and see where it goes with it. But I understand that you might do a reading for Bruce tonight.
Sure, I'd be happy to if you're interested.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, well,
Do you want to do it on the air or you want to do it after
let's
we
do
offer?
it on the air. Why not?
Okay.
That's good radio.
Okay. Well, I'm right there with you being a skeptic. I
don't know about you, Pooh, but I'm a skeptic.
it's like I have to have proof as well.
Right.
Sure.
Like, I don't know that. How do I put this? I now I can say without a shadow of a doubt that I know because I saw my dad.
Right.
But I experienced it. Now, I believed in spirits before that because I lived in a house where I could put something down on my dresser and I know I put it right there. I turned away for a second and then it's gone.
It's gone.
And it is
Yeah.
gone.
I can 100% relate
Right,
to
and
that
so-
part, yeah.
Well, I'm getting better at being able to explain things and talk about things that have kind of bothered me in the past. But at one point, I was at my grandmother's grave. My grandmother and my grandfather buried right side by side to one another, and I was putting flowers on the grave, and it was a little windy day, and so I was sitting there, and the bag that I had the flowers in blew off behind me, and for some reason I thought in my head, well, I'll go get that in a minute, and that just when that thought came to my mind, I heard my grandmother say, "Don't worry, I'll take care of this." I mean, just plain as day. And I heard a pop, like when the wind catches a bag and it pops. Mm-hmm. I heard that pop. And I turned around, and to this day, I've never found that bag. So I don't know what happened to that bag. But I did hear my grandmother say, "Is she going to take care of it?"
She said,
And,
That's what happened.
I still get cold chills when I think about this. And then for a long time, even on my way home, I called my daughter and I said, "This is weird." And I'm trying to explain this to him, and I'm thinking nobody's believing what I'm saying. I called my dad, and my dad just said, "Well, strange things do happen." And it's just one of those things where I guess I'm with Bruce that, whether this is real or not, I don't know, but there's starting to be too many things in my older life that I can't explain. And that's one of the reasons for this whole podcast is the fact that we're searching for the answers to the unexplainable. So
Yeah.
let's go ahead with this card
Okay.
reading.
well, I have shuffled, and the way I usually read is I have you shuffle for just a bit. Just kind of like, and you can think of something you want to ask specifically, or you can just kind of remain open and see what comes up.
So the noises you can hear, guys, are card shuffling.
Woohoo, look, card sharp.
And what deck do you use?
I use it's the Universal Rider-Waite. Rider-Waite is like one of the most standard decks you can find. This one has more variety, more shadings in the color, and the pictures.
Very nice artwork.
Pictures are much more 3-dimensional in scale than in 2-dimensional. So if you'll cut the cards and bring them back together again, and then spread them along the table. And we'll just have you pick 3 cards kind of randomly through. And what I recommend when you do it, just kind of like when you go for a card, it's going to feel random, but just like go with your instinct and just pick and keep them face down for now.
I'll do this
and
with
keep
my
them
eyes
in
closed.
order. Well, I don't know. It's easier to see if you kept them open.
Okay.
You can't see what's on the back side anyway.
All right.
Just saying. I mean, I am practical, and like we were saying, I have had a healthy dose of skepticism this whole time. I'm like, I am a Reiki master,
You said
which is
3, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're a what,
I'm
master?
a Reiki master. It's a modality of energetic healing, and a friend of mine got me into it. And the first time, I thought that I went in to have.
She said leave him
session.
face down first.
Yeah, he's not
I
following
haven't
instructions.
looked-
I saw you peek. But just keep him in order. He doesn't know what they mean anyway. I was a big skeptic. I was like, oh, this is going to be a crock. And until I experienced it, and I was like, oh my God.
It's amazing.
It really does get you out of the way, and it boosts your energy, and it's just all and more. So there's just a lot about being in this physical realm and in this body that we don't have answers for. I think maybe science at some point will catch up to where we can explain things. We're just not at that point right now.
Well, I agree with that 100% because if you look at the science today compared to the science of back in the early 1900s, we're starting to explain more and more stuff.
Right.
And we're starting to also find out there's more and more stuff we can't explain. And so before, we used to make up answers, which we're not doing anymore. We're just saying, hey, we can't explain that right now.
Well, I think it's
And then we
okay to
keep
say,
looking.
I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with
but
you.
well, let's see. Let's see if we can find out.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you
Exactly.
can't find out, and that's okay too. I'm okay with not knowing.
Exactly.
I think that's the difference than what I was like before.
Yeah,
It's like
and-
being afraid of what I didn't know.
Yeah.
Well, there was so much psychological warfare going on between the U.S. government and the general public, and that they were afraid that we couldn't handle the truth. And there's just been a lot of things that's going on in the past that they wouldn't even open up to the President of the United States over certain things, because we saw an interview talking about UFOs, about this organization which now is looking into UFOs. And the gentleman said one of the reasons he got out of it is because he was having to keep things from his boss. And so, who has the right to know and who has the right not to know is my question.
Right.
Why
I
are
don't
we
think
keeping
somebody
stuff
gets to
from?
decide for me.
Yeah, I mean, why is? I don't understand this mentality, but anyway, it's going forward. But
Well, the church does that as well.
well, yeah, okay, I agree 100%. But
And
we
all
try to
this
keep
comes from spirit.
we try to keep religion and politics out of our podcast. But,
Okay. Okay. All right. I saw you peek.
I didn't even know what it was. Though.
Okay.
So I
No, but
couldn't read it. I just saw a glimpse of a picture.
Right. What I was going to say is flip them over however you want, but if they land upside down, leave it that way because it has meaning. And so,
Well, my life's upside down. Anyway,
just go ahead and flip it. He's peeked already. Go ahead and pull them all the way over. Okay. All right. So this card actually kind of popped out of the deck, and so when doing card readings, it's really important to pay attention to that because, for lack of a better description, it's information that wants to be known to you. And the interesting part about this is the information is not coming from me. The information is coming from you. I am, quote unquote, I'm just the reader. I'm the messenger.
Right.
Okay. And so people come for readings because sometimes they're having a hard time and can't like see clearly, meaning that they're having a hard time trusting their own intuition and need a little help. It's like going to someone and saying, what do you think about this? You have any advice for me? And so that's how I approach it. I approach it in for lack of a better description, practical magic.
Right.
Okay.
And let me say as a disclaimer before we get started, if you see anything that's going to be very personal to Bruce that you think
God,
that...
no, I'm a professional.
No, I'll
tell him this is private.
Yeah, just
I don't care. You can say it as long as
Okay,
it's not like my PIN number to my bank account. We're fine.
How much you got in there, Bruce?
Not enough. Not enough.
so with his permission, then you could please go forward.
Okay. Well, the card that popped out of the deck is the King of Pentacles. There are different suits within part of the tarot deck, just like there are in a deck of playing cards. They actually used to read tarot with playing card decks. So Pentacles, the Pentacle is actually a coin. So it represents finance, money, or anything physically manifested, something you can actually touch or hold.
Well, I hope this
Okay,
is
so it's on the
positive.
material. And within the suit, it runs ace through 10, just like a playing deck, and then it has the face cards or the court cards that runs page, knight, queen, king. And so the King of Pentacles, the information that I'm getting from that is usually when a court card pops up, it usually represents an actual person in a reading. When a card is, for me, people read differently. When a card is inverted or upside down, for me, what that says is that either there's a blockage for that information to be fully manifested, kind of like a kink in a hose, like the water can get through somewhat, but not as fully as it might. Or that it is something that is in the process of becoming. So it's kind of in the awareness somewhere, but not fully in the full face, right up in your face, saying, yes, that's what's happening right now. And so the King of Pentacles, if you notice in the symbolism, he's full of abundance and kind of sitting in the state of his own power. He's self-created. And actually, the information that I'm getting from this is not so much that it is a person, but a state of being. And so it feels like it's kind of a very self-satisfied place that you are right now. Like, I'm not saying that you couldn't want more. Like, I'll hit the lottery. That wouldn't be okay.
Right.
But that you're comfortable where you are right now, from the work you've done so far. And so it really feels like a state of mind as opposed to, well, I guess it does represent you. It does represent a person. Here we have the swords. Swords represent the mind, thought, ideas. So it all has to do with the head. And in this card, if you notice, he is like, it's a state of anxiety, a state of worry.
I've got plenty of that.
Right. Well, and when that card shows up, what that indicates to me is that it's really important to take a step back. I call it the hamster wheel. It's like blah, 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 and we've let the mind take too much charge of our life, in a state of being wise, and so the mind is really not. The mind is not who we are. The mind is a tool. And so it gets to run rampant on that hamster wheel when it is not integrated with the rest of us, meaning our heart and our soul. And so we really get the truest information when we listen to our heart and our gut, because the gut can't lie. The mind can lie all the time, saying, well, I'm too this or I'm too that, or like, I'm not enough of this or I'm not enough of that. And so, and that just, we hook into those and we create all this anxiety. And so in this particular card, I like that it's inverted. I like that it's upside down, because, as you said, I have enough of that in my life, but it also says, okay, now you have an opportunity to let it be fully in your face. And so now you can step into the opportunity of sitting back, bringing this into your awareness, taking some breaths, maybe doing some meditation, doing something to counteract that habit, because what it is a habit. And instead of trying to break a habit, it's more effective to replace it with a new habit. And so for me, when I would get into those mind spaces of blah, 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 and not being able to get out of it, it was a struggle. And it was like, it felt like every second I was like, stop. But that's the first step to do, is to stop it in its tracks and not let it continue. And then to sit back and distract it with action and breathing, meditation, whatever you can do. This is also very interesting, this next card being the Temperance card, because the way that I read cards is, this is not your typical tarot layout. There's like past, present, future. There's the Celtic cross with 10 different cards. They're called layouts. I do it more intuitively. I read them like each card is kind of like a couple words or sentences, and that there's a kind of a theme as you run through it that applies to the person who is having the reading. And so to counteract this, to help, it's important to maintain balance. And so when you notice the symbolism in the card, water is representative of feeling and emotion. Mm-hmm. And the Aquarius is the water bearer, mm-hmm. Right? Okay. And so that is actually something that is innate for you. Like it, when you remember to do it, it is something that you can be good at. If you notice in the symbolism, okay, he's surrounded by water. So it's about being in touch with emotions, your feelings, at the same time being grounded. There's one foot in touch with the emotions in the water, and then one foot on the ground and grounded. And so, and by grounded, it's those things that give us balance. And so temperance actually means balance. And allowing, and you maintain balance by actually allowing feelings to flow. So many people dam them up and keep them from, like, they'll get mad and then hook into that being angry, instead of like, okay, getting mad, allowing it to go ahead, feel the feelings, and then allowing them to pass. Because emotions are supposed to flow like water. We're supposed to feel them and then move along. And so where people get imbalance is because they don't allow that. In society, we're not really taught to do that. And so that is part of this. So you're sitting pretty here with the King of Pentacles, and you can maintain that feeling of self-satisfaction on this earth plane within your body, feeling, grounded, by letting go of the anxiety, maintaining balance. And then we have the Death card, and the Death card inverted. The Death card, when I do readings, I don't think that I have ever, it doesn't mean an actual physical death. People look at it and they're like,
right.
And what it is it's an indication to let go of things that no longer serve. And so symbolically, we're letting something die. And it could be a habit. It could be associating with people that aren't really good for us.
Bye, Darrell. Bye.
I'll say, I can't do this job anymore.
Wow, that was quick. You see who brought it first.
And so it's a shift, it's a transformation.
I was kind of hoping it was smoking.
That was funny.
That's what it needs to be. I need to quit smoking.
Well, it wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt. Do you smoke?
I do.
Time to quit.
I got to clean out this podcast.
So it's kind of, it can be dramatic. It can feel like a death. With smoking cigarettes, there's a definite relationship there, and there's a ritual involved, and so you actually have to shift everything around that, and create a new life, so to speak, in order to move forward. And so this is on the horizon. It's like change is afoot, and it's necessary to become more of who you really want to be. And so that is what I have for you in a nutshell.
All right.
Yeah.
That's really key. Like, I don't want that what you just said to get lost. That the death means that you're going to become more of who you're meant to be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because that's really the point.
In the letting go. In the letting go of the things that no longer serve. And so it feels like, I can tell you, it feels like there are things that you know what it is, and there are things that have been on your mind. It's just a matter of like getting yourself ready to do that, and you're going to get yourself keyed up and get the momentum to do so by finding balance. That's the key right there.
Wow.
Not too much or too little of one thing, and it's really key about like getting a handle on the flow of emotions. Mm-hmm. The end.
Well, Bruce, what'd you think?
Well, I mean, it wasn't a bad reading, that's for sure. I should have asked about my love life, though.
Well, you can come into the shop at Kindred Spirits on Tuesdays and Fridays, and I will be there.
There you
Yeah,
go.
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and do that
plug.
Yeah, go ahead and do that plug real
Absolutely.
quick. Absolutely, we appreciate you
And
coming.
we're
But maybe we
hoping
don't want to
have-
hear about your love.
Well, that one won't be broadcast.
We're hoping to. We would love to have you back on the podcast again. And
I thought this would be fun.
Maybe some more of your friends from Kindred Spirits. I know I met RJ, and I've met, what's the girl's name?
Maggie.
Both lovely people. We would love to have on. That would be really cool. But definitely Kindred Spirits Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Fridays.
Tuesdays and Fridays. Sorry, Tuesdays
Those are
and
my usual
Fridays.
days. I pick up other shifts, but
That's when you can go in for a reading with Pooh. So.
In closing, Pooh, is there anything that you would like to add to the ending of this one? Because definitely we're going to have you back.
oh, great! I would love to come back.
Yeah, we would
Please,
love to have
yes.
you back in here and hear more of your stories and reminisce about the beginning and what's going on right now. So,
And I always get little insights of like today is be very, very specific.
right.
the little things that I still am learning, so.
And if you get any feelings about this upcoming episode we have in Greensboro on Saturday night, where there's a little girl.
Investigation,
Yeah, there's a little girl been seen, and we got some pretty realistic photos.
Is this in a house? Or
It is in a
We
house.
actually have the lady actually took a photo. Like, she took a selfie with a tablet over her head, because behind her couch you can see the stairway going up to the second floor, and at the top of the
There she
second
is.
floor they caught the spirit of a little girl. Like, clear as day, you can tell it's a little girl.
Right.
Well, we hope to send Amanda in first and let her get some feelings.
Let
We,
me get a
like,
little-
Information?
yeah.
we like to send her in, make sure that we don't hear any screams and yells.
She's like the canary in the coal mine.
Basically.
And then Bruce and I will come in. But to let her
I
get
had that photo.
a kind of a clean feeling. We get everybody out of the house and let her do her thing to start with, and then we'll all three go back in for the investigation. But
That sounds like fun.
it's interesting. It's been interesting. We've been very fortunate that we've had some very active locations that we've been to. We haven't been to any that
Incredibly active, yeah.
that we've not had some activity there. So.
Oh yeah.
And hopefully from this investigation, others in that neighborhood is going to stem out of it, because it's a very active neighborhood, and maybe we'll get some more.
Battleground? Is that what?
Yeah, it's Battleground.
Yeah, and
In Greensboro.
my buddy Sean lives over there in that neighborhood, and he's got like 3 or 4 neighbors over there that all have activity going on.
So maybe we can get some other investigations out of that one too. So does Maddie have anything for closing?
No, I just want to thank you so much for mentoring me and for coming on the podcast, and I love you, and I really appreciate our friendship.
Well, right back at you, Amanda. Thanks for having me here. I've really enjoyed it.
And thank you, Pooh. I appreciate the
Bruce.
reading, and
You're
it's
welcome.
been fun.
Cool. Yeah, it's nice to meet
insightful.
everybody. I would like to just in parting say that like spirit is around us all the time.
Yeah.
Just because you can't see it doesn't mean you can't feel it or communicate. And so if you feel like you have a loved one that you want to talk to, just talk out
Talk to
loud. I mean, if you feel a cool breeze beside you and you know the AC is not on, chances are pretty good you're in contact.
Spirit.
Thank you again. And good night from Mothman Podcast. We hope you enjoyed tonight's episode.
And don't forget, like, subscribe, and comment on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Instagram, Twitter, and more. And take a look at our website, mothmanpodcast.com, to find out more about our services.